Hey, Diana, did you know building a diversified marketing portfolio is easy?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my co-host, my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Not much, Mark. I like how you get to edit whenever you have bloopers, but my coughing fits have to stay in the recording.
Because I think it's funny, because I can make fun of you.
So my illness is humorous to you.
So we're pulling a twofer today. We're actually recording two podcasts back to back. So we just got finished recording the one on the outline that you put together, which was on
Tech.
So now we're going to do one on the outline that I put together, which of course is my favorite subject, marketing.
Which is also my least favorite.
I know, because according to our producer, we have to record 1 week ahead, and we got behind over the holidays. So we have to record 1 week ahead for editing purposes, and just for basically because of the fact that Diana keeps coming down with typhoid or something. I don't know what it is.
You're going to get me like quarantined by the CDC.
ICE is coming after you. That's all I'm saying. So
one of the governmental agencies.
One of the government
one of the
agencies.
alphabets.
They're coming after you. All right. So what are we talking about today?
Marketing.
Okay. What about marketing?
I'm not sure, actually.
Have you not even read my outline? I worked hard on this.
Don't make me go there, Mark. Well, I thought we were talking about the ABCs of marketing, but that is not what the outline says.
No, well, I took a little liberty and I changed it. So what we're going to talk about today is building a diversified marketing portfolio. These are fancy words that you hear your investment advisors talk about. You need to build a diversified portfolio. Well, why do we want to build a diversified portfolio of anything? To mitigate risk.
Oh.
The risk of what? So I love this phrase. The worst number in business is the number one. In other words, you're relying on one source of business. Mm. This is the whole Mike Morris story. Mike Morris. Of Fireproof. The whole name of his book revolves around the fact. Well, actually, no. The whole name of his book revolves around the fact that his building burnt down. But the real story behind Mike Morris was that when he first started his practice was 100% referral, and pretty much all of it came from one advertising attorney. Mm-hmm. He had one source of business. And guess what happened? One day, somebody got perturbed, and his one source of business got cut off. And he almost crashed and burned. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of the point I'm trying to make here. Is that you need multiple sources of business. In other words, you need multiple marketing channels within your portfolio to diversify the risk. Because what if something happens someday and something gets cut off? If you rely too heavily on one marketing channel, you could be screwed. Happened to me back in, it was in the early teens. And Google decided to levy a penalty on our website because they thought certain SEO practices at a certain vendor that I was using was what's called black hat. And they just cut me off.
Oh.
In one day, all of a sudden, boom. It took us like 4 months to get that thing back up and running. So that hurt. But we survived it because it wasn't the only way I got business. So what we're going to talk about today is, I think the term I've heard is, you need to be omnipresent. In other words, you need to be present everywhere in all marketing channels, or at least marketing channels, that are effective. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And one of the key pieces of that is we're always constantly experimenting with new marketing channels. Not only do we have our old reliables like SEO and attorney referrals and client referrals and things like that, but we're always experimenting with new marketing channels. And sometimes they work and they get added to the portfolio. Frequently they don't work and they get cut from the portfolio, but we always try to keep a portfolio. Right now we have about 9 main things that we do in terms of marketing. What I would call different channels, different verticals that we get business from. And I think that's a pretty good number. But I'd like a few more. We could stand to have a few less if some of them crapped out, but the whole point is that we want to keep a steady mix of ways that we get business and we don't become over-reliant on any one particular marketing channel. In other words, we're diversifying our portfolio.
So it sounds like, Marc, that you have clear definitions for when your campaigns start and end, what you're looking for from each of your campaigns or your 9 different strategies, if you will, and when you expect to achieve a certain, I know we've talked ROI, but certain other KPIs at each time interval when you try new things.
Right. So it's important to track your marketing. In other words, it's not just throw a bunch of money out there and hope it works. You actually have to track it. You have to pay attention to what's working. In other words, you have to track your lead sources. You have to track, attribution, what they call not only last touch attribution, but, if you can track first touch attribution, or if you can kind of see the chain of information that's your client, the consumer is consuming in order to get you, then you get a better sense of the overall picture of how your, as the quote unquote, your omnipresent marketing channel is actually working. And we do lots of things to track. The old tried and true method is we use call tracking numbers on a lot of different things. So we have a different call tracking number for our website. As a matter of fact, now we have different call tracking numbers depending on what page you pop in on the website. We have a different call tracking number for our TV campaign. We have a different call tracking number on our newsletters. I think we have a different call tracking number on our calendar, our annual
magnet calendar.
The magnet calendar that we mail out every year, which is for the money is a brilliant investment. So that's one way to track. The tech people will tell you that they can also track where people come in, on your digital channels based on pixels that they embed in the different web pages that people are using. So your web people can give you data, on which of your digital channels are working, whether it's an LSA, whether it's a PPC, which PPC campaign was it, which web page did they land on, did they land on the blog? We now have a new tracking number just for our blog, which generates a lot of traffic. So using technology to track your referral sources is extremely important. And don't rely on the old tried and true, but miserably inaccurate, how did you hear about us? And not that we don't ask that question. We do ask that question, but we don't rely on it. If somebody is calling me from a TV phone number, but they tell me they saw me on the side of a bus, which I don't advertise on the side of a bus, I'm going to go with what the call tracking number told me. But there's also the concept of last attribution. In other words, what's the last thing that they saw? In other words, the call tracking number that they're using versus how did they hear about you initially? For example, an attorney gave me your number, but yet they're calling in off of a call tracking number from our website. Well, is that credit for that lead? Does it go to our organic Google SEO, or does it go back to the attorney that referred it to us? Well, modern practice would tell you the credit goes to both. Mm-hmm. One gets first attribution, one gets last attribution. And these are things that you track separately, which is not uncommon. It's not uncommon for people to see you in multiple ways before they call you. An attorney believe it or not, attorneys watch TV. An attorney might see my TV ad. So the attorney now knows me from the TV ad. Now he gives the client the referral to call Mark. He does disability law. So the client then takes that referral and then he Googles me. So that client has 3 different attribution points as to how they actually found this firm. And that's why being omnipresent is so important, to have these multiple channels, because they feed each other. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We're going to talk about our marketing portfolio, our marketing mix, and how it has worked for us, and hopefully give you a few nuggets on what might work for you. We'll be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, Diana, let's talk a little bit about our diversified marketing portfolio. I would say the biggest one in the budget is what I would call a branding play. Branding as opposed to direct response marketing. I'll define it as best I can with my pea brain. But branding is about getting general awareness in the community of who you are. Versus direct marketing is getting somebody to call you at the moment they have a specific need, okay? So our biggest budget item in our budget is our TV campaign currently. I think we're spending, or plan on spending somewhere in the roughly like $50,000 a month on TV in the Houston, Texas market, which quite frankly is very low if you look at all attorneys. That's barely a drop in the bucket for Jim Adler or Terry Bryant or, those guys. They're spending 10, 15 times that. However, for a disability practice, I think we're probably number 1 or number 2 in the market. And I view that TV campaign primarily as a branding campaign. That is general awareness within the community. However, it does have an element of direct response. There is a call me, call me, call me. Here's our phone number. So we track it as a direct response marketing channel. However, I know it has what we call a halo effect, which is when we run TV, our attorney referrals go up. Our client referrals go up. Our SEO performance improves. Our PPC performance improves because people see the name and they remember the name. You go to, you type in disability lawyer near me, you're going to get a choice of 3 lawyers on the map pack. Okay, so now the client has to make a choice between the 3 lawyers that they're looking at. Which one are they most likely to choose? And the theory goes is the one that they have some name ID with, they have some brand recognition. Brand means your name. They recognize your name. That they're more likely to pick that one of the 3 choices that they have. And that's the whole concept behind the TV advertising campaign being a branding vehicle. Honestly, you look at the numbers, there is a little frustrating because we look at how many people call that are directly attributable to the TV campaign versus what we spend for it, and our return on our investment is not terribly great. It's not, now it's getting better and it will get better over time, but it's not a world beater. So the question is, why do we spend so much money on it? It's because we can see the lift that it gives to all our other marketing channels when that happens. Guarantee you my attorney referrals and client referrals go up when we're on TV. Our SEO work gets better when we're on TV. So that's our first marketing channel. And that's kind of what we build around.
Yeah. So on the brand, I think of this when I think about the PI firms that have significant community, or even the estate planning community project that they sponsor. So, for example, Mike Morris has the backpacks that he does up in, I think it's Michigan. Craig has the ice cream truck down in Florida, and all of these other different things. Our friends Cooper Hurley have the motorcycles work that they do over, I forget, in Virginia.
They're in Virginia Beach.
So I think that there's the really niche things that they do. You can't really tie. I mean, maybe you can try a hashtag sweet justice to, see if you can get an ROI on that. But some of these things, like the ice cream truck, you probably won't get an ROI on that's very noticeable.
Right.
But it does increase your brand awareness. And for especially these hyper local practice areas like the estate planning one as well, it's very important for those types of things, the brand play.
So then we have what we kind of call our experiments, because we're always looking for new marketing channels. So there are things that we're going to do that we don't know if they're going to work or not, but they're in the budget this year and we're going to test them out. And so we budget for them for the entire year. But one of the concepts that we have is we know at mid-year point, which is roughly around 4th of July, that we will probably pivot off of some of the experiments that we're using that are not working. So, for example, we're going to start pushing a Spanish language marketing campaign using Facebook this year. Primarily Facebook, probably some other social media, but primarily Facebook because we're looking for an older demographic. And we have a budget for that. And we're not betting the farm on it. We put a good sized budget. We put a 6-figure budget into it. And that's for the entire year, but it may work, it may not. We are hopeful that it will work. We have heard from other people in other markets that this type of campaign will have some good results, but it's what we still review as sort of experimental. The same thing is we're doing a particular public relations campaign directed at doctors who might be disabled and need a lawyer to represent them on their disability insurance claim. Kind of a niche play, kind of an experimental thing using the PR agency. We've never done that before. And we've created a budget for it. And it's an annualized budget, but we know mid-year we can bail out of it if we want to. We can divert those funds at any point, really. But I always think you got to give something 6 months to see if it's really working or not. But we know at mid-year we might divert out of these experimental type things, just depending on what we see. But you always have to be experimenting because things are always changing. I mean, if I'd never changed anything, I'd still be advertising in the yellow pages. God help me. So
yeah, I think that this, Mark, when you start doing these types of things, and I hear about this in the marketing strategy, I think about, is it Collins fire bullets, not cannonballs?
Fire bullets, not cannonballs. In other words, test small before you blow all your powder.
Yep. So you're going to do the Spanish language market probably in the Houston or hyper-local area.
Hyper-local, yeah.
You're not going to go national with a national Spanish campaign.
Not going to do that yet.
Yep.
Maybe one day, but not yet.
Fire bullets. Well, one day, once you've tested your theory, you will likely start firing cannonballs.
Right. So our next thing that we're looking at is what I call our turnaround projects. Now, this is where we have a marketing channel that we feel could work, but it hasn't necessarily been working as well as it should. So I'll give the example of our pay-per-click campaign, our Google AdWords campaign. We feel it should work, but we feel that that's not necessarily been run as well as it could have been, hasn't been optimized as well as it could have been, it hasn't been maybe not had the expertise that it should have had. So this is what we call our turnaround project. So this is something that we know other people have used, that we know that it can work. I'm throwing LSAs and PPC in the same bucket. I
was just going to say LSAs.
Yeah, so I kind of throw those two in the same bucket. And I know they work differently, and I'm not trying to conflate those issues too much. But we have the same result with LSAs that we have with PPC, is that it's worked, but it's not worked as well as we think it should work. And there's more levers to push in a PPC campaign than an LSA campaign. LSA campaigns, you really don't have that many options. You know, you just yes or no, and that's about it. And LSAs, you can't segment out by age, which is a big deal in the disability world. We obviously want to skew towards the people that are over the age of 50, and in LSAs, you can't do that. Whereas PPC, you have some ability to do it. So that's why we personally are trying to push into the PPC realm and try to fix that. I know a lot of lawyers who do PI work, you know, they favor the LSAs because they're looking for younger people. You know, young people is a good thing for them. It's not for us. So we're in a different market slightly. But the point is that we feel it should work. We feel we can get it to work, but it just hasn't performed as well as we think it should have. So that's our turnaround project for the year. So I've put some significant budget into the PPC campaign this year. Again, knowing that come around 4th of July, if it just isn't showing some promise, that we can cut it and we can divert those funds in different areas, you know, that may be working better.
Yeah, I think I would also put paid social in there. Sometimes paid social works, and sometimes I don't think that it's ever gotten the returns that you would think that other firms have seen. So I'd maybe throw that into your turnaround projects.
Well, that's actually what we're doing with it. But the way we're turning around paid social is we're not doing it in English, we're doing it in Spanish.
Oh, so I am guessing on your marketing strategy.
Yeah, you are.
Look at
there
me.
you go.
Look at me go. I do know some marketing. I do think, Marc, that this is exciting for me to hear about because, you know, one of the things that you and I fight about on this podcast is, you know, when I come to you with some ideas from a conference you weren't able to attend or something, and I'm like, or I come to you and I'm like, Marc, I just came up with this great idea. And you're like, I already tried it. I'm not, you know, doesn't work. And the thing
that's how you piss Diana off.
Yep. Well, but also not only does it obviously show a closed mindset, not that we're going to talk about that on this podcast, but
you know what it does remind me of? That we made it through the entire prior podcast without me dropping an F-bomb. So
let's try and make it 2 podcasts in a row.
I doubt that's going to happen.
Well, so it's your podcast outlines and you can make it explicit. But I do think that the thing about the turnaround project strategy of your portfolio is that strategies that didn't work at a certain time may work now, either where your business is at or where the market is at. So for example, obviously Google continues to evolve. LSAs used to work for law firms, I mean, even disability law firms for a while until it didn't. One day it may need to try it again. And so just because it didn't work doesn't mean that it may not work in the future or even now. So I like your turnaround projects.
Right. And also it could be market specific. You know, maybe the LSAs don't work well for us, you know, in a big market like Houston, but maybe they would work in our Beaumont office or in our El Paso office. So, you know, always be tinkering. The next one is what I call the proven winners. And with the proven winners, we want to scale them as much as possible. The problem is sometimes things cap out. There's only so much money you can spend. You know, our number one return on investment by far, and I've said this on many, many podcasts, has been our search engine optimization work, our organic Google, for lack of a better word. But even that is evolving. So we still have to play with it. We have to watch it. You know, now SEO is turned into SEO/AI search. In other words, when people do a search term, instead of, you know, getting the top three pack, they're getting an AI result instead. The AI overview. And we need to make sure that if somebody types in best disability lawyers in Houston, that we're in that AI overview. And so far we have been, but that doesn't mean we will stay there if we don't work at it. And that's a whole nother podcast I'm going to do. I'm going to do something on AI, on the AI overview. I just haven't quite worked it out in my head yet, but stay tuned.
Yeah, maybe after Pilma you will.
As a matter of fact, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for podcast material here at the Pilma AI Expo, which I'm going to in a couple of days. So we'll come up with all kind of fun stuff there. The problem with SEO work, you know, is that at some point you cap out on the number of dollars you can spend. You just can't spend any more money on it. Now, don't tell your SEO vendor that. They'll figure out ways to spend some more money. But but you can't really scale it. You know, you can scale it to a point, and then you just it sort of is what it is. I have the same problem scaling the next two things that work the best: our attorney referral program and our client referral program. They work really well, but there's only so much money I can spend on it before I've kind of tapped it out. I mean, I suppose I could send a book to lawyers every single day, 365. They'd probably get sick of me. It probably wouldn't help.
Yeah, that would have diminishing returns.
It would have diminishing returns in a negative sort of way. So that at some point you cap out on that, but it's still a tried and true strategy. So the way you can do that and try to grow that is to grow your list. Try to expand your list to more attorneys, to potentially more clients. You know, assuming all of your other marketing channels are working well, you're going to get more and more clients. So your list should get better and better. And never neglect the people that didn't hire you. Those people need to be on your list as well. Or people that you had to turn down for whatever reason. That's a list that you need to continue to grow and continue to market to as well. Maybe in a different sort of way, with a different sort of message. But that's the way that you can grow and scale those tried and true channels. Other proven winners, copying what other people are doing in terms of practice areas. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're starting the elder law practice. We know elder law works. We've never done it up until this past year. But we know other firms that have taken elder law and run with it and have done a bang-up job of building very nice practices. And we have models that we can look at. We have friends who've done it in other states that, are letting us basically copy their marketing, copying their processes, things like that. We know it works. So that's another way to sort of expand and scale, into new channels. You can basically find a new practice area that can work. This year, we're going to be launching medical claim denials, which is kind of a new practice area for us. So these are ways that, different, what I'm going to call the marketing channels that you can get into is just by finding new niches to try to market yourself in. Part two of this, you have to have the discipline to cut the losers. It was hard for me to get out of the yellow pages.
Yeah, I knew that's where that was going. You had to
going.
admit that. Oh my gosh, Mark.
My yellow page salesman took me to play golf every damn week.
That was what you really had a hard time
I gave up my friend, yes, because,
Not the yellow pages.
I know. I mean, I was in probably 15 different books, and we were on revolving contracts, and every contract came renewal the same. So every time he would need to renew me, like, let's go play golf. And, it was hard cutting that cord back then, but it was evident that the technology was moving somewhere else, something called the internet.
Yeah, whatever that was.
Whatever that thing was. But we had to, that was the first example of it was something that, it was a loser that had to be cut, you have to be careful of maybe the next quarter it'll get better, and you're balancing that between fixing what's broken, Right now we're trying to fix what's broken, but at some point, if it can't be fixed, we're cutting it. Mm-hmm. We're going to get rid of the PPC. We already got rid of LSA. We cut LSA. We put a big effort into LSA. We did a lot of work developing, our LSA profiles, our Google business profiles around our we have 12 different offices. Put a lot of work into that, but eventually it became clear that it just wasn't going to work, and we just cut it. And I was, kind of leery about that because I just had heard so many good things from the PI lawyers about it. But it just, like I said, the age thing, it just didn't work for us. Now, do we keep monitoring it? Yes. Might we test out LSA a little bit in the future, maybe in a smaller market, just to see if anything is significantly changed in that market, or maybe it works for other practice areas, like maybe it works for elder law. We never say never, but I think the point is don't be afraid to kill what's not working, because that budget is precious, and that budget can be allocated somewhere else that actually is working. So a lot of this is about monitoring your data.
Yep.
You got to know your numbers.
And I would also say monitoring your ego. I think that Mark, whenever we had a shift in our marketing team, you got to play CMO for a long time, and you just used the marketing budget as your little
Personal glorification machine.
I'm glad you said it and I didn't. And so I think that it can be, can take it a little personally when things don't work. So just beware of ego as well as the data.
All right, confession time. We have a therapy session here. It was argued that it might be worth our while to cut NBC out of our TV rotation or significantly reduce it. Mm-hmm. However, NBC has a daytime show and they bring me on as a guest frequently, and I'm certain because I advertise on their show. And I'm like,
Mark.
I don't really want to cut that. I like being on TV.
So you were at least aware, though, that your
I was
ego
aware that my ego was involved in that decision.
In the budget.
You know, it's fun to be on a talk show and get interviewed and, you know, be primped and they give you a box of candy. It's really cool.
Oh,
you know,
it's really the candy for
It's
you.
really the candy that I wanted. But, you know, to be on Houston Live and be interviewed is kind of cool. You know, you send a clip of it to your relatives and they think you're big shit. And so, oh, there it is. So
you had to do it, Mark.
I had to do it.
You've talked a lot also about your July 4th timeline. So want to emphasize more about that or just kind of...
Well, so a lot of times we do new initiatives starting in January. That's what everybody does. You know, your New Year's resolutions or whatever. You have your New Year's goals. You have your marketing plan that you roll out in late December to launch in January. We typically do that. There's no good reason why January is you could do this at any time, but we tend to work off of the calendar cycles, which means the mid-year point in the year is roughly July 4th. Because I have a big wing-ding at my lake house on July 4th every year. So that's sort of a demarcation. That is like...
Where's my invite?
Yeah. The
Oh
U.S.
my
Post
gosh.
Office kind of sucks.
5
The
years
U.S.
later,
Post
I'm just
Office,
finding out about your big...
Well, it's a it's a family wing-ding.
Okay.
You want to really
Moving
hang out?
on
You want to hang out with my
to
parents? Really?
July 4th.
You have met my parents. Do you really want to hang out with my
Miss
parents?
Brenda.
Okay. All right.
So you use July 4th as your demarcation.
In my mind, there's two big holidays in the year. There's Christmas and there's July 4th because they basically are midpoints of the
They
year.
sandwich your decision making.
Exactly. So this is how my mind thinks.
And so if things aren't, by then, if your campaigns aren't performing,
Right.
ego or not,
NBC better pick it up by July 4th.
yeah, you're still not committed. You can't even say the sentence.
I
Right?
can't finish the sentence. No, I can't.
Yeah, because I do think that at the end of the day, it is clearly a mindset thing to commit to saying it's okay that this didn't work out.
Yes, it is. It's okay. You know what they say: half your marketing's wasted. You just don't know which half. So, and I always look at this. It's marketing's kind of a mindset shift. You know, you have to again understand that half your marketing dollars are wasted.
Yep.
You know, because you got to be omnipresent. You know, I run a commercial. I spend, what is it, to run a commercial, depending on when you run it, is somewhere between $200 and $400 for a daytime spot. I could play a lot of hands of blackjack with that. You know, I could go bet on black. And is it going to generate, is that one ad going to generate a particular call? You know, I can probably tell you, I was sitting there watching this morning at 9:00 and my TV commercial ran and I looked up, I'm like, hey, that's me. And did we generate a single call out of that one particular commercial that cost me $400? Chances are we didn't get one. Mm-hmm. Okay. But what about the next one? Well, what about the next one? What about the next one? You know, so understanding that you have to, you know, spread your money around and a lot of it is going to go to unproductive places. But you just have to accept it. You have to accept that. You have to accept that that's how this is going to work because in the end, it's not about any one particular thing. It's about how the overall firm performs, you know, say at the end of the year. At the end of the year, I spent $1.5 million marketing the firm the year previously. What did it generate me? Well, we generated millions of dollars worth of business from that. So overall, it worked. Did any one particular thing work particularly well? No, but we're omnipresent. We're on as many channels as we can get.
Yep, and I do think that, that's very Instagrammy of me to say, but with every ending, there's a new beginning. So if NBC doesn't decide to perform, and if you are able to cut it on July 4th, maybe ABC becomes your new talk show people.
NBC's about to cover the Olympics. So all of a sudden, I'm going to become Olympic bro. So.
Okay.
So you never know. It could work.
You and Kevin Hart and Snoop Dogg.
Yes, I know. I want Snoop's contract. I saw Snoop on TV last night.
We suddenly jumped the shark.
Yes.
So when we come back, Mark, we're going to close our 5 takeaways.
5 action items going forward.
On our marketing portfolio.
Yes.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
All right, Diana. So we are going to go over our 5 action items going forward. It would help if I put my mic back up so it could be heard. Oh, by the way, before we get started, I'm going to remind everybody, send me an email, marc@marcwhitehead.com, if you want a copy of my marketing matrix, my marketing plan. Send it to you in Word. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. That has been very popular lately. People keep emailing me. Every time I make the offer, I get like 4 or 5 people emailing me like, hey, Marc, send me your marketing plan. So, and if you've sent me an email and I haven't sent it to you yet, I will send it. It does really come to me. It does not go to a marketing assistant. I'm just a little behind. So anyway, action item number 1, which I'm going to take, which is audit your current marketing mix. Think about it in terms of marketing channels. And again, channels are not TV channels. These are marketing methodologies.
Streams,
strategies. Television is one of ours. Our SEO work is one of ours. Our pay-per-click is one of ours. Attorney referrals has its own separate strategy and its own separate program. It has this nice little drawn-out plan. Our client referral strategy, that's a strategy. But look at your marketing mix and know where you're actively working, where you're actively putting your dollars. Put it in terms of dollars. How much are you spending? And if certain things, it's not you're spending money, you're spending your time, well, then calculate how many hours a week you're doing it. A lot of people do strictly referral marketing. Well, okay, how many hours are you spending? By the way, those hours are valuable and they cost you opportunity. They cost you money. What is God, if you're a billable rate attorney, God help you. But if you are one, what is your hour worth in terms of billable time? Well, if I'm spending 5 hours a week marketing and it's $500 an hour, well, you're investing $2,500 a week into your marketing effort. That's the way to think about it. Now, that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That is a good thing. Because, I know a lot of referral lawyers that do not spend enough time, working their referral lists. But anyway, it's still a cost, and you need to evaluate it, and you need to make sure you understand. Like I say, audit your current marketing mix to understand where both your money and your effort is going.
So my takeaway from the podcast is to set a mid-year kill date. So Marc's is July 4th, and that July 4th may not always work for every campaign or every strategy. But it is good to know where you want to end up before you get invested, both emotionally or with your ego, so that you can actually make that decision with a clear mind of, okay, this is going to be the date by which we consider success. And so mid-year is a good one. But some things, particularly like community service projects, the backpacks like we talked about earlier, or, the ice cream truck, they may not have a mid-year kill date. They may just have a longer term plan.
Right. Well, in community service initiatives is the way I put it, because that is a marketing channel for us. Community services initiatives tend to have a much longer lead time and a much slower boil. Mm-hmm. But when they boil, they boil. So you just have to accept that for what it is. 6 months might be good for most things. Sometimes it's only a month. Sometimes it's a year. It varies depending on channel, but just think about that ahead of time. The third one, this was mine. And you sort of mentioned it there. Build your reallocation plan before you need it. If X fails, then this budget goes to Y. Okay. You know, a marketing plan involves budgeting, whether you're budgeting time or whether you're budgeting money. And when you do budgeting, you're by definition, you're making choices. You're choosing to spend money on one thing. And when you choose to spend money on one thing, you're diverting resources from being able to spend it on something else. By definition of the process, you're making choices. You know what they say, they're your kids, make good choices. Well, sometimes we don't make the best choices. And so my theory is kind of have a backup plan. You know, we are spending X number of dollars on our digital marketing this year, the PPC. You know, if we can't get it on track within the next 6 months, I know exactly where I'm going to spend that additional money. I'm going to put that additional money back into our TV campaign. I'm just going to divert dollars, but I've already thought it through. I already kind of have an idea. I understand what choices I made. I understand where I was diverting resources from to try this new marketing channel or this old channel that we're trying to revive. And I understand if it doesn't work, we're going to go in this different direction. So I've already thought it out. I've already thought it through.
So my third action item or takeaway from this podcast was to, my
This
fourth.
is number 4.
Number 4 was to invest in measurement infrastructure. Obviously, I mean, I'm all about data, and
You love data.
I love
Data.
my data.
It's data.
Data.
Star
But
Trek says it's data.
my data, you can't manage what you don't
Data.
measure. So some of the more obvious metrics that marketing people like to talk about.
Yes.
Marketing people. Cost per lead, cost per signed case, by channel. You have ROI, you have your big spreadsheet. So just make sure that you are tracking your data, but also that data is visible through a scorecard of some type, and that you're reviewing them often. So basically, you can't miss the data through emotion or ego.
Right. So one of the things I think is important is that you be able to measure your results. Now, if you're in a contingency fee law firm, like many of us are, that means you need to put a value on a case, even though you may not know the ultimate outcome. You know, for our SSD cases, we put an inventory value on them of about $3,500 a case. We know that through years and years of data. You know, that we know what our loss rate is. We know what the average collected fee is. Therefore, we can do the math and we can say that our inventory value on an SSD case is $3,500. Okay, so I spend, you know, $1,000 and get, I'm going to use 2 because I can do the math, and I get 2 SSD cases. That means I got $7,000 worth of business for the $1,000 I spent that month. So now I know I have a 7-to-1 return. If I got 1 case for that $1,000, that means I have a 3.5 return on my investment. Okay. So what is a good number? You know, most people will say you need at least 4, 5, 6, 7 times your investment over the long run, you know, to be a good business decision. And that varies, you know, that's, you know, for a lot of reasons, but the point is, it's important to know ahead of time, or at least contemporaneous with the point I signed up a case, was it valuable? You know, this car wreck case over here, you know, maybe soft tissue versus this car wreck case over here, which, you know, may have broken bones or catastrophic injuries. You can't value those 2 cases the same way. So you have to make some educated guesses on the front end to kind of, you know, estimate the value of what's you're generating like on a monthly or quarterly basis. All right, number 5, celebrate the killed campaigns. Don't be ashamed of it.
NBC, Mark. Hashtag
You know,
NBC.
and really what I'm talking about is kind of change the firm culture. You know, killing the losers. It's smart. It's not shameful. You know, failure is not failure. It just means I've learned something new that I didn't know before.
And an opportunity to use your marketing
You have an
dollars
opportunity
elsewhere.
now. You have an opportunity to do something different. So, you know, learn from your failures. You know, and certainly, you know, at least internally, don't punish your people for taking chances. You know, if they come up with an idea that you tried, it didn't work. You know, don't punish them for that. Now, if it's a vendor, that's different. You know, if it's a vendor that screws you, you know, or comes up with something stupid,
Doesn't perform.
And I've had them. God, I've had a couple of vendors have sold me some Lulus. Maybe you don't want to do business with them, or maybe you want to scale back a little bit, or maybe you want to think about it. So, but anyway, closing thoughts. Data. This all requires data
And no ego.
and no ego, but mostly data. Anyway, with that, this is our second podcast today, so we're going to end it right here. We want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So we ask that you rate and review this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Get those 5-star reviews going, and hit that forward button. If you've heard anything that interests you, send it on to a friend. Let's grow the listenership. And hit me up with an email. I think I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. If anybody wants a copy of our marketing plan, our marketing matrix, send me an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc spelled with a C, and I'll send it to you in Word version so you can slap your name on it and take credit. I don't care. I got no ego. None. No ego whatsoever, unless it's on NBC. And make sure you visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at www.disabilitydenials.com. And remember, let's build a practice, not a prison. Bye.
Bye.